Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel and to part 4 of the Discovery build diary. So starting off with some needle gun descaling action on the chassis. There is a lot of surface corrosion, it looks worse than it is, but that's what I'm doing to start off with. So I do sincerely apologise that it's been such a long time since the last video. Some of you may already know this, I'm hoping that you do and can excuse me for taking so long to upload. The unit that I am actually in doing the Discovery, it's not mine, it's a family member's, and unfortunately I will need to be out of there soon because they are going to be moving out of there soon. So I've only got a couple of months really in the unit left. So I'm really trying to get this Discovery back on the road as soon as possible, which is why I haven't had any time for editing videos together and doing other bits and pieces like that. So I do sincerely apologise, I hope you can forgive me, but part 4 is here and part 5 will be following very shortly. I'm not sure if I mentioned it before, but I have actually found a hole in the chassis when I was needle gunning it. But again, I'm not too worried about that. I've carried out other repairs in the past on the 110, just like that, so I'm not too worried about it. So I do plan on using Corollas again for painting and then using an internal wax. So I'll be injecting that into the body, into the chassis, basically anywhere that I can put it just to try and prevent some of that corrosion from coming back. So just using a breaker bar to crack the nuts off the exhaust bolts and then just a ratchet with a socket on the end. Before anybody gets too excited, no, I will not be putting straight through exhaust on it. And nobody laugh at my crazy hairstyle as well. I was just curling it before having a meal with some friends that evening, so do not laugh at me. I know it looks a little bit strange, but that is what's going on there. They were pretty stiff, but I managed to get them off relatively easily, and I will be replacing the exhaust with something newer and much nicer to look at. Now onto removing the body / panel sealant. So I'm scraping off the excess and then using white spirit and a rag just to soak and wipe off the remaining residue. For any thicker bits before scraping, I soaked a rag in white spirit and then left it on the area to really penetrate that sealant. So white spirit is just the best stuff for this job. I have used WD-40, I think that were mentioned in the comments on the last video, but it just does not penetrate like white spirit does. So what I plan on doing is, whilst all the panels are removed, I'll probably just spray them individually because the plan is to give the body a respray. Of course I'll have to do that with the roof and everything, but it just makes sense because I'm going to such an extent to restore this vehicle. Of course it needs respraying as well, and it'll just give it a new lease of life and just help to protect those panels. So that's what I'll be doing on the outside, and then on the inside I think I'll be giving it probably a lick of paint, something like Corollas, just to help protect it against all that corrosion because I only plan on doing this job once. And now on to removing the driver's side aluminium panel, and look at that corrosion, that is pretty scary, and basically has all happened from not replacing those perished seals. So in a previous video I told you how important it was to replace them. If you are going to get a Discovery, it's just one of those things, unfortunately they do go on these early ones. So yeah, I'm not going to waffle on about how you need to replace them seals. I'm pretty sure you already know from what this Discovery looks like, sort of how bad it can get. So this entire corner and seatbelt mounting point needs replacing. So again, what I did with the other side is pretty much on a smaller scale to what I'll be doing to this side. The floor is pretty shot as well, and the side panel where the 3 doors typically go. It's just how it is on this Discovery, but I'm going to tackle all of these places and all of these issues, but I'll get to that another day. So I started by taking out those bolts ready for removal, a few more to go. So a little bit off topic, but I'm thinking about filming another catch-up video soon, so if you do have any burning questions or anything like that, feel free to leave a comment, send me an email, drop me a message elsewhere, because I am receiving quite a lot of questions again, especially surrounding my new job, which I'm grateful that you are interested in it. So I was thinking about just filming another catch-up video because it's been quite a few months now since the last one, and it seemed to work out really well. It got quite a few questions answered from you guys. So if you do have any questions that you do want to ask for the next one, feel free to drop them in a comment below and I will do my best to answer as many as possible. Using a scraper and a hammer to slice through that sealant. It does work, it just takes a lot of time and patience. So there is just a mixture of bolts, screws and sealant all holding this panel on. So I am just working my way through trying to make sure I don't miss any. What I did do is leave some of the bolts in. This just helped when I separated it from the steel structure. It just held it on then, because even though I can quite easily lift these panels on my own, I really did not want to damage them because they are pretty straight. Like, there's not really a lot of knocks in the panels at all, so I don't want to be using filler and things like that if I can help it. This is pretty much how the workshop manual says to remove it. It does take a long time. It took one evening into the next day, and of course just leaving in a few bolts for support. Now removing the plastic sill protector, knocking these bits of plastic out that are holding it on, and then the nuts and bolts that are on either side of the trim/aluminium panel. There's that crunchy sill again. It's going to be such a transformation when this vehicle's finished, because, I mean, this would have gone to a scrapyard. It just would have done, if we're all being honest with each other. If it hadn't gone to me next, I think the next person probably would have just cut the losses with it. So I think once everything's painted, all the inner steel structure's been welded up and painted, and once all the aluminium panels go back on and they're resprayed, I just think it's going to completely transform the look of the Discovery. I mean, of course it is, because it'll be pretty much fully restored at that point, but it'll just be magical to see, because when I first got it, a lot of people were commenting on how clean it looked and how brilliant it was, and it wasn't until I started actually stripping it apart people started going, oh god, it's a much bigger project than what we thought. And I mean, it were a bigger project than what I thought, really. I didn't think it'd be sort of this extensive, especially with time running out of the unit now. So it's kind of getting a little bit stressful, but it's just working through it one step at a time and just keeping that motivation up and morale high around it, because once it's done then, and I can really enjoy the vehicle and use it as it was built for, really, and go travelling and shove Laddie in back and go for dog walks and things like that. Just use it as it was intended to be used. So now on to the next day and removing the loose debris from the inside of that panel. Of course, use a mask. I'm not going to lecture in PPE. Being lectured in PPE is one of those pet peeves of mine. Everybody makes mistakes and, you know, might not wear enough or might wear too much. You can't please everyone, but, you know, just protect yourself as much as you can. Now, moving on to the final drive unit, taking that off now, starting by removing the wheels. And look at that, what a creative transition. Freeing up the suspension by removing the shocks. Remove those and just let the back end hang down to easily remove the springs, etc. Need to remove that nut next, holding in the diff to the A-frame arms, and of course the bolts that are holding in those springs onto the spring plates. But first, let's make my life much easier by removing the oil. Don't actually lick it or eat it. So once that nut is removed, it allows the axle to hang even further, but it's still very much supported, and there's bags of room to remove those springs. Again, I know I've probably said this till I'm blue in the face, but it is all just light surface corrosion. I will just be painting this with Corollas, I think, because it really has done well for the 110. I do really avoid using it in winter because in the UK they salt grit the life out of the roads and it just all ends up sticking to and inside the chassis and it just rots them out. And to finish off my night here, I removed the hubs, caps, bearings and separated the discs. My hair fell out of my bun at this moment in time before anybody comes for me. I got it back out of the way though, as you can see. And it's the next day now, starting by admiring the extraordinary factory welding jobs. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. The amount of poor welding jobs that I've found in this Land Rover from the factory is unreal. Now, removing the final drive unit itself, so I'm going to refurb this rear axle because it needs a new pan anyway, welding onto it, because I put a hole in it the other day with the needle gun. And of course it just gives me a chance to assess if the unit actually needs rebuilding, which it absolutely does. Of course it does. Another thing to add to the ever-growing list of things this Discovery needs. One job at a time, and it will all get done. That is now separated, and I will be disposing of that manky oil. So on axle stands now, removing all the bolt-on bits like backing plates, stub axles. This dog has really had its day, and it would be daft of me not to rebuild the final drive unit at this stage, which I will be doing properly this time and not in a bathroom. I mean, not that I didn't do it properly last time, but I think it'll just be in a better environment than just in the bathroom, so I won't be sat on the loo rebuilding it this time. So I will be prepping with a needle gun and sandpaper, then painting and all that other jazz, but I'll get into that in a future video when I'm actually doing it, and I can sort of talk you through what I'm doing in that video. Remove the stub axles and associated gaskets. And my handy blue spot spanners coming back into play. 10mm spanner on the one side and a ratchet and socket on the other. And of course I sheared a bolt. I've lost count of how many bolts have snapped. With all that removed, I'm now ready to remove the pan itself. And just like that, it's gone. So I will be prepping with a needle gun and sandpaper, then painting and all that other jazz, but I'll get into that in a future video when I'm actually doing it, and I can sort of talk you through what I'm doing in that video. Now cleaning up the area, ready for a refurb and new diff pan, and of course just using the angle grinder to actually remove the pan and then a flap disc on the grinder to clean up the area. On to removing the A-frame arms for their TLC treatment and trusty breaker bar as per usual. Knock those bolts out, remove the trailing arms, and that is where I'm going to leave it today. So I really hope you've enjoyed the video, and I will see you again in part 5, and I am so sorry it's taken me so long to get another video out. So take care of yourselves, and I will see you again very soon.